Hey everybody, this is Ghost with Blades and Blasters. I'm going to be doing a quick video on building a character in Symbaroum. Symbaroum, just as a quick backstory for what kind of system it is. Bit of a dark fantasy background system. Um, Not quite as end of the world scenario as Warhammer, but we're talking like same ballpark as Shadows of the Demon Lords, some situations like that. It's very low, dark fantasy, gritty, fair bit of hopelessness, but not to the point of just everything's screwed type hopelessness. Got a very interesting and cool way of doing character generation that I want to go over. The reason I'm doing this is because we will be looking at a game here in the next few months, running it. It'll be run by Tetnac. In our group. Probably late September, October. We're looking at the fall for it, but I will be a player in it. And I wanted to go ahead and just go through some core concepts for it in case you're ever thinking about running through playing a game yourself. So I'll be using one of my backup sheets from the game. It is one of those games where you might want to consider a backup sheet. First tip there, I would give your player at least one, as combat can be surprisingly brutal if people get hit. Especially at early levels, there's not a whole lot of protection to go around unless you build specifically for it. As with any one of my character guides, I would tell you to make the character that you want to make first, and then iron out the mechanic portions so that you enjoy playing the character mechanically and for role-playing. So build your fluff first, then build your character to match that, so everything works the way you want it to, more or less. So I'm going to run through basic character generation, try to keep it short, and just make something simple. I'll be using the base book. I will touch on some core concepts from the advanced player guide. These are the two books that I have there more. I'm happy to review them and go over them for others. But so we're going to look at the first thing for character generation. Player's Guide. So you can look at archetypes, and archetypes kind of give you ideas for builds, and actually pretty good, most of them. Some I have questions about as far as how, good they are, but for the most part, a lot of these, if you look at these and you're not really sure where you want to start, again, make the fluff first, and you can use one of the archetypes, and they'll do pretty well for you. I mean, these skills are, pretty much make sense for any one of these builds, and they have different archetypes for each overarching archetype, I guess I should say, kind of subclasses within them. So like for your archetype of warrior, you got your berserkers and things like that. So, and they do that for all of them. I'm going to try to make one originally. Then you've got your attributes. So it is a D20 roll under system. And as far as how it works in a roll sense, just to give you an idea, for opposed rolls, it's usually modifiers. So you're almost always rolling off of your, either defense or offense for opposed tests or to skill check. Most of the time you want to be under. If not all the time, you want to be under whatever your biggest number is. So it's a D20 roll under. With modifiers based on what you're trying to do or how difficult it is to hit the opponent, how difficult you are to be hit, things like that. So with that in mind, let's look at attributes. So attributes accurate. This is going to be pretty much everything as far as trying to hit things. So yeah, to hit intended targets with punches, strikes, throws, or missile from range weapons. So accurate is basically your chance to hit. Cunning is knowledge, wit, things like that. So this is basically your intelligence stat, how quickly you are to think about things, logic. Discreet, sneaking around, more or less, being sneaky, doing sneaky things. Persuasive, force of will, willpower. No, persuasive is your personality's force. Convincing you are. Quick, this is usually your defensive stat or how nimble your character is. Resolute. That is your willpower for all intents and purposes. And that has to do with resisting corruption as well. Corruption being a big mechanic that can pretty much take a character from you, and it's not hard to accumulate corruption, so you do have to be careful, especially if you're a wizard. You do have to be very careful with corruption stuff because it will ruin you if you don't take the right stuff for it. To mitigate it, I should say. Strong, that's pretty much what you would expect. Your just physical strength, your ability to resist disease, your vitality, things like that. That has a direct impact on health. Vigilance is sort of perception, personal awareness, reviewing surroundings. And all of these obviously have their corresponding attributes that oppose them. So for like vigilant, it would be discreet, would be the easy one. Strong usually actually opposes strong most of the time, unless somebody's trying to avoid an attack or what have you. I mean, each scenario kind of depends on what you're trying to do, and then you've got what will be opposed by. Then you've got secondary attributes that are derived from your primaries. So toughness is just equal to your strength, but never goes below 10. So you're guaranteed 10 health. Any amount over that from your strong increases. So if you start out with 15 strength, start with 15 health, and health's pretty good. It also increases your pain threshold, strong divided by 2. Pain threshold, if an attack goes over your pain threshold, it's bad. You either get knocked down or the enemy gets a second attack against you. Both of these are bad things. Defense, quick minus armor, impeding value. Armor does have values that can make it hard to move around. Quickness, again, is your defense. Ability to avoid blows or mitigate them in other ways. And then corruption threshold is resolute divided by 2 rounded up. That's how much corruption you can take before it starts getting really bad. If you get a certain amount of permanent corruption, you become an NPC and an abomination. So don't do that. And then obviously it has recommendations. If you have a low attribute somewhere, then you could do some RP related things with, like, if you have a low cunning value, you're maybe not very book smart and impulsive, don't have much education, things like that. Races, there are different races here. You got your standard humans, obviously, but they come in 2 flavors, one of which is a very probably leaning more towards, I want to say more maybe not quite Holy Roman Empire, where these kind of names, Edguy, Gadramel. I think that they would encompass multiple different types of analogs to your average everyday individuals. Excuse me, more analogs to your average kind of like familiar, real life countries, France, things like that. But they're mainly your this is a more aristocratic society. They're ruled by a queen. But you have your serfs and things like that. So I would, and then there's a church that's basically very, very heavily involved in everything. So I guess probably kind of close to the Holy Roman Empire, but not in the naming conventions. Probably maybe closer to, Italy, city-state type things. But it appears that there's a bit of a mix as to what you could do with the Ambrians. That being the Ambrians are the people of the Queen. Then you've got your barbarians who live up north in the woods in the Davakar. Davakar being a very shitty and rough forest that has, corruption seeping out in different various regions of it, and basically releases the abominations that exist upon the world. Barbarians, I mean, I don't really have to go too far into that as to what they're like. Honorable savages type deal. Think of that. Obviously differences between, clans and whatnot, but for the most part, that's kind of the archetype they fit into. Changelings. Again, these are sort of fey-touched, strange individuals that have been affected by some sort of either birth defect or magic or what have you, that allows them to change faces, change, body type. They have a shapeshifter trait, which is something that allows them to change shapes and whatnot. I'm not going to go too far into this other stuff. Probably going to just do a basic human, but I'm going to kind of touch on the races. They also have long-lived. It doesn't really have a lot of effect other than for RP reasons. I suppose you could have a very old changeling. Ogres. Ogres are just big badasses that are kind of dumb most of the time. That have more or less been accepted in human society, though they are viewed with disdain. They're treated as second-class citizens, represented by pariah, which makes it more difficult for them to interact with others outside of their race. And they are also poorer than anyone else at the start. They have less funds to play with in character generation. They can also get robust, which would make them massive, bigger people. And that has impacts on being hit and also weathering hits, so that's very important to remember. Goblins also more or less allowed in society. But again, second-class citizens, mainly because they're mischievous and they play very vicious games, and they also have very strong tempers. They get short-lived and pariah as well. They also typically get survival instinct as a trait, which would again have impacts on their movement, abilities to do things, and whatnot. So those are your basic 4 races. There are other races in the advanced guide that I'm not going to go over too much. These are your traits. I'm not going to go over all of them, but I'll go over whatever ones I pick. And then abilities. And abilities are kind of what make the characters. So, I'm going to make something pretty simple to start off with. We're going to do a human warrior. We're going to do kind of a shield fighter type. So, the first thing I'm going to want to do, I'm not going to pick any pictures or anything. Name, let's call it, we'll call him Johan. Sort of similar to John from the Warhammer Fantasy one. So Johan. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to do is pick his race. I like to start with the race first because then you know what trait that you get. So we're going to go with an Ambrian. And Ambrians get something called privilege, and that is a trait. So what that is, privileged will... So you basically belong to a high social society, so he's a noble type or just well-to-do, very successful merchant class. Gets a second chance to succeed when taking on social challenges within its own society, and does not have to roll the dice unless it strives to accomplish something which is questionable. So basically interacting with other Ambrians or within Ambrian society, he gets 2 chances to roll, if he needs to roll even, and he also gets additional money to start with, and that's important because my understanding of reading it is that you can spend money to acquire things before the game sessions start. Again, if you want to do a concept, but maybe you lack the correct equipment, the money to buy the correct equipment, I would consider going Ambrian unless it's just something. Again, always make the character you want to make. But if it's something where I'd like to be human, I'd like to have this, and this, but oh man, it costs so much money, I'm not gonna do it. Well, with Ambrian you can, if your GM allows it. $50 enough to get full plate armor if we want it to start the game. So, there's a lot of benefit to going with an Ambrian early on if you just want to make like a concept. If you're going with a human and want to make a human concept that is dependent on certain equipment, go Ambrian, and you can pretty much get that. So that's the trait I'm going to have. Now I'm going to include some stuff from the advanced book. Called Boons and Burdens. So what these are, is these can provide you with some nice little bonuses to your stats. Basically what they count as, this is just how we look at it, so Boons count as 5 experience, Burdens, Boons and Burdens both count as 5. And you can have, typically it recommends no more than 3 of any, of either. So when it comes to burdens, one thing you can do with them is you can take 2 burdens and that gets you an extra skill. Normally when it comes to skills, as it says here, you can have either 5 novice skills. Let me find where it says it, because it is rules is written here. Abilities. So you can either have 5 novice level skills and no adept level. Novice being obviously entry level, adept being the second of 3 levels. It's novice, adept, and master. You can either have 5 novice abilities, which makes you, I guess, more flexible. You have more options to advance into, but you're not as strong, perhaps, as an adept level skill would make you. Or you can have 2 novice level skills and 1 at adept. Which makes you a bit more focused, not as much room for flexibility, but does make you more powerful what you're focused in my experience. Also very good for mages to have an adept level casting ability, because if you don't, then you're playing with fire, playing with corruption mostly, because if you look at some of the magic traits, like sorceries, we'll look at different ones because sorceries are an exception. So theurgy, that's like church magic and god type magic. At adept level, you no longer suffer permanent corruption when learning powers. At adept level, so normally you suffer corruption when you learn mystical powers. With this, you wouldn't, up to adept level. Obviously, if you take mastery in something, like take master level, you would. You also learn how to rest the powers and rituals on a foundation of faiths, so that you only suffer 1 temporary corruption when casting them. Normally, you roll 1d4 every time you cast a power. So this gives you essentially more castings if you want to make a mage. But I digress. Again, we're not going to do a mage here, so throwing that to the side there. Boons and Burdens. So I would like to make somebody who has 1 adept level skill and 2 novice level skills. What I'm going to do, because novice level skills count as 10 XP, I'm going to go ahead and take 2 burdens on this guy. So burdens, these are just drawbacks that your guy has. Shield fighter, we'll say he's part of a perhaps knightly order or something or another where he has this code of honor. So I'm going to take code of honor, and that has its downside to where you have to fight. You're not able to run from a fight ever. So that has obvious drawbacks depending on what's going on. And then the other thing I'm going to take will be slow, and I will tie this in with his equipment. And slow makes it to where you don't move as far when you're in combat. When precision counts, you are slower. And of course, I could have role-playing things as well. So that gives me an extra 10 experience. Now, rules as written, I get to take an additional ability as a result. So, what we're going to do for this. So, when I think of a shield fighter, I want to be tanky. I want to be able to take hits, maybe get in the way a bit. So, first thing I'm going to do is take shield fighter. I'm going to take it novice level, and I'll show you why in a minute. It's a novice level shield fighter. What that will do is increase the damage that I do with a single-handed weapon, or increase the damage I do with whatever weapon that I have in the sword arm. So if it's a single-handed weapon, it goes from 1d8 to 1d10. If it's a short-handed weapon, it is a 1d6 to 1d8. So it increases your damage with the weapon that you're wielding. It also provides you with a greater defensive bonus with your shield. So I will plug that in. And abilities. And the cool thing about the sheet in Roll20, which is where I'm doing all this building at, the Symbaroum sheet is really well done. So whoever's done that, thank you. I do not know who to give credit to for that one, but if anyone does, please link that in the video, and be sure to pass on my thanks for it, because it is pretty intuitive. So I'm going to have it novice. Now I want good armor, and this is where my adept skill is going to come in. So armor, you get the novice and adept level skill if you take it adept. So novice level skill increases the amount of protection it affords, so everything increases by 1 step as far as dice. So light from 1d4 to 1d6, medium from 1d6 to 1d8, so on. So that's great by itself, but the passive for adept is really what we want. The armor no longer has a negative effect on quick or abilities based on quick. So that means you can wear full plate and get your full quick benefit for defense because you're basically practiced in that. So that's extremely good. So I'm going to take adept level man-at-arms. At adept. And put it as passive, because you can obviously change this around. Okay, so those are 2. I get 2 more novice skills, so we're going to look at some things we can do here. So, let's see. We've got some options. Things like recovery, quick draw, these could all be good. Things that sort of decrease or sort of put the Ionis on 1 stat are pretty good. So like for this, for example, Iron Fist, and I think I may actually take Iron Fist because this would help my stat spread. So the character can fully utilize strength and therefore use strong instead of accurate when making melee attacks. This is really good because we can pump our points for the distribution, because we're going to distribute to attributes whenever we get past this part. We can put them into strength and not suffer, you know, issues with accuracy, because it's going to be based off the one thing. So I can go 15 in strength. Not only have I bumped my toughness, how many wounds that I have, but I'm also going to make it, you know, my odds of hitting someone better. So I like that. I'm going to go ahead and take novice level Iron Fist. So look pretty good characters before I was to get that one more. So again, I got a couple options here. We could go with Bodyguard, which seems pretty fitting. Again, that allows me to take blows directed against someone else if I'm nearby. I can walk in, use Resolute, and take the hit. And I could probably weather it better than most people, given I'm probably going to start this game in plate armor if I use this guy. Recovery would help you recover some damage. I mean, that's pretty solid. Steadfast is good to help you break out of effects. You know, we're looking at a lot of things like this. But what I'm probably going to do, let me see if I'm able to do it based on this, because there are you get some additional options in the advanced player guide, one of which is archetypical abilities, which are specific only to the archetype these fit in. So Feat of Strength is this one. 3 other abilities from below are required for this ability to be available, and I like Feat of Strength, and you're about to see why if I'm able to do it. So for Shield Fighter, got that. We've got Iron Fist, and we have Man-at-Arms. So we can take Feat of Strength. Let me go down to Feat of Strength to show you why this is so good. The character can handle taking a beating and counts toughness as strong +5. It doesn't affect pain threshold, though. It's just still strong divided by 2. But this is pretty great because this gives me an additional 5 toughness, which is great. You can take even more hits. And then obviously the next levels are pretty good. So Feat of Strength is good. We could go Bodyguard. We could always take Bodyguard at another time. We'll go Feat of Strength for now, because I like how that would work to make this guy very, very tanky. And obviously you could, you know, you're not required to take these. You could still give him a shield and everything. I mean, you could just make a guy whose sole purpose is to just get the hell beat out of him with Feat of Strength. But Feat of Strength, plug that in. So there are abilities, and so this guy is strong +5. So Shield Fighter Man-at-Arms is not. It's a pretty good guy. Pretty good at fighting, taking a beating. He's going to be a pretty exceptional warrior, other than the fact he's a bit slow, and you know, once a fight begins, it's game. We have to go till we're done. So there is that. So there's some downsides to him, but I like that build. It's pretty solid, you know, defensive, standard build. So the next thing I'm going to do is assign attributes. So you got your attributes here, and you get an array for them. Obviously, there's also just the point distribution where you can't have anything over 15, and obviously nothing under 5. So there is that also. Let me find that just so I have it marked here. Attributes, yes. So typical distribution is distribute values 5, 7, 9, 10, 10, 11, 13, 15 among player character attributes. You can also transfer points between them. And then there's also point buy. Only one attribute value may be as high as 15. None can be higher than 15 or lower than 5. So keep those in mind. But I'm pretty much going to do the point buy first and then redistribute them. So he's got 2 characteristics based on strong, which is going to be his health and then also his ability to attack, and just any other thing you use strength for to resist grabs and what have you. So 15's going there because that's affecting a lot of stuff. I'm going to go for the lower end here for the 5 stat. Accuracy doesn't really matter to me because my melee attacks going to be based off my strong. Don't need accuracy. Don't plan on fighting from range. Hopefully other players will be able to make up for that deficiency. So now we've got the 13. Gonna plug the 13 into quick because I want to have solid defenses. Then we've got 7. Not discreet. I'm a warrior. Not for sneaking. 11 and 2 10s and a 9. So the 11 we're going to put in Resolute because, again, that affects our corruption threshold. While we're not going to be doing a lot of things that cause corruption unless we do it RP-wise, there are things we could bump into that could cause it. So that can be, and there's magic that can give you corruption as an attack, so it can be pretty rough. Our 9 will go into Persuasive, and then our 2 10s can be Cunning and Vigilant. So you see you get to 80 when you do all this. That's pretty much what you'd start with for anything. Now we can redistribute some stuff because I don't like all this. So again, don't really care about being sneaky, so I'm going to drop Discreet down to 5 and bump Resolute up to 13. Gonna take 1 on a Cunning and 1 on a Persuasive to bump Quick to 14 and Vigilant to 11. And actually gonna bump 1 more down from Cunning, Vigilant to 12. So here's the reasons I did this. So I want him to be a frontline fighter. With Persuasive 8, he's not terrible at talking to people, but he's not going to be weaving words and tricking people or anything like that. He's just a straightforward kind of guy, maybe a bit of a likable personality, but just gruff. I've got Quick because I want the highest possible defense I can without looking at Strong. And, you know, because Strong, you can only have one statistic at 15. I'd rather have Strong at 15. Obviously, you could go either way with these. But, you know, I like to be able to hit things and do damage to them. Then Quick is your defensive stat again. Resolute, the reason I can put it to an odd number and not really worry about it anymore is because it off your threshold rounds up. So my corruption threshold is going to be 7 no matter what. Obviously having a 14 Resolute will allow me to succeed at a higher chance if I have to make a Resolute test, but it's a 5% difference. I'm willing to live with that if something bad happens. I should have invested more. And then Vigilant, he's a warrior, he's a soldier, he's been in combat. Vigilant is your, you know, ability to look around and notice threats in your environment. I would think that, you know, if you're a trained warrior, you have, you know, skills in that. You're being aware. So that's my stat distribution. And then, you know, obviously picked race and abilities, no mystical traditions. Shadow, I think that's important. It's connected to your corruption level. I don't think I have any corruption, so mine would be pretty pure. I would think probably white or something of that nature. Very pure shadows. But I'm not going to go in too much into that. We'll call him mercenary, maybe. And then the next thing, equipment. So this is where being Ambrian really pays off. So everybody gets certain equipment, which is basically this thing. This is all camping supplies. You get your sleeping roll, cooking equipment, firewood, flint, steel, rope, water skin, dagger to the side. And then you get, you know, whatever comes with your abilities. So normally, with the abilities I have here, here's what I would get: medium armor. I would get a shield from Shield Fighter, and I could start with a one-handed weapon, whatever run that I want that's within reason. So I kind of interpret this as you get ordinary weapons. You don't get the special weapons like the ones that have the traits, which I'm about to show you. But again, I guess that's left up to interpretation. I'm not really sure if you're supposed to start with those things or not. I would think not, because they're more expensive and they have obvious benefits to going through them. But again, I think it's a GM decision as to what you would start with based on this interpretation. Obviously, single-handed weapon, ranged weapons could be anything, but I'm not really sure that a GM would allow someone to start with like an arbalist or something, or a very powerful piece of equipment, just because their ability or power says so. But again, that's kind of a GM thing. But I'm gonna kind of disregard these and say, hey, you know, I'm just gonna maybe just take what I want instead, as opposed to having excess stuff that I'm not going to use. Because if I take full heavy armor, I'm not going to use medium armor, because it's the same difference. It doesn't change my impeding because of my man-at-arms. So what I would do with this guy, with Ambrian, and I will admit this probably sounds a bit power gaming, but it does, again, and don't ever encourage that, but it does make sense for the concept in my mind. So, armor. I don't care about impeding because it's not going to affect me with man at arms, so I'm going to just take heavy armor. That's going to give me a 1d8 for defense normally, but 1d10 because I have man at arms. So plug my armor into here. Heavy plate, not Ambrium plate. Impede of 4, but I'm just going to leave it at 0 because, again, doesn't affect anything. Negation d10. And attribute quick. Not flexible. Impeding 4, but I have man at arms, so that would soak d10 of damage, which is pretty solid. Obviously, if I want to, so there's advanced armors I could look at and buy, but I'm not going to bother with that. I'm going to just keep it as simple as I can. But I do encourage people to look over the advanced equipment just because that can help out. So I've got my armor that I want. That's going to cost me $10. With privilege, I start with 50 extra thaler on top of the 5 that all players get unless they're pariahs. So where am I taking? So 50, we'll go with 55, if I can stop clicking twice. 55 minus the 10 from heavy armor, down to 45. Okay, so I've got my armor. Now I want a weapon. What weapon would I like for a single-handed weapon? What seems good? Let's take a look. So for single-handed weapons, we've got some special ones here. Crow's Beak, Fencing Sword. I like Crow's Beak. That seems like a warrior's type weapon. What else do we have in the advanced section, though? I'm curious. So if for advanced, let's take a look. It'll be up here, I think. Yes. So for advanced single hand weapons, Crow's Beak, Lance on Horse Flail, Long Hammer, interesting. Long Whip, Estoc. Nothing super exciting there. I think I'm probably just going to go with something simple and use the Crow's Beak. Deep Impact, so it'd be 1d8 plus 1 normally, with Deep Impact $25. So let's go ahead and drop that now. So we got 20 left. But again, because it's Shield Fighter, we're going to get 1d10 with it. So melee, Crow's Beak, strong, d10, plus 1. Let's put the 1 there. I don't know if this system would break it or not. And it is Deep Impact. That's what gives it the plus 1. So Crow's Beak, Heavy Plate. We want Shield now. So Shield. Let's take a look at shields, because we can, again, buy... There are different shields that are available. So shields that we have are bucklers and steel shields. Normally provide plus 1 to defense. But because we're shield fighters, they will provide plus 2 instead of plus 1. What I like is Steel Shield. It has Balanced. And what Balanced does, provides an extra 1 in defense. So, what we get with this is an additional 3 defense, essentially, because we get the 1 from it being a shield, the plus 1 bonus from it being balanced, and the plus 1 bonus from Shield Fighter. So, Steel Shield. Where's that at? There it is. And that is going to be 15 thaler. So, let's see. Is this with 5? And then that other 5 could go into other things. Whey bread, herbal tinctures, cures, things like that to make sure you have ways to heal and whatnot. Negation doesn't negate anything, just provides bonuses to defense, quick, balance. So, that would set us up with a pretty good shield fighter. You'd have 17 in quick, 15 in strong, no negation from wearing heavy plate, D10 of damage resist. It's a very strong starting character, obviously susceptible to things with magic. Not too susceptible though, because again, you do have a 13 in Resolute, so it's pretty solid. But you're pretty difficult to hit guy. You've also got this extra little money to spend. So I would say that it's a pretty solid starting character. But that's sort of a quick brief thing into getting into character creation. With obviously you can mess around with boons and banes and things like that, but I wanted to kind of make something general, straightforward, something everybody's familiar with. As far as this is just a sword and board melee bash guy, and again, it's gonna be a concept anybody's really familiar with. But that's more or less Symbaroum character generation. Now, so it's very simple to do, but it's very flexible, especially given that the creators of this game made a lot of different combinations that can work out together, and you can make some very good, interesting characters on this. And even with a character as strong as this early on, defensively and offense, I mean, it's a pretty strong individual, both offense and defense. Symbaroum can be brutal, and you could die pretty quickly, so this is by no means an unbeatable build. Oh yeah, also, strength +5, 20, toughness 4, I forget. So you did 20 toughness, pain threshold of 8, very, very tanky in fights involving physicality. But that is Symbaroum character generation. So I will be doing a Numenera one, as we do plan on running Numenera at some point. Numenera is also pretty fun, simple to do. Another one I enjoyed making tons of characters for, but the best way to learn characters is, again, just to make them in the system. If anybody has any requests for this, as far as, going over certain character types or builds and things like that, I'd be happy to help you out. Feel free to shoot us a message on the YouTube video. Just ask for a ghost and I'll take a look at it. But that's it for me. Thanks for watching. Take care.